Good morning and welcome to the farm. Been wanting to take some time to do an introductory video explaining some of the history of this farm and the story of our family and how we wound up here. Also our future plans moving forward. I also wanted to take a little moment just to explain what this page is about, this channel is about. Ultimately, we just want to encourage the simple life and document the restoration of our farm and the raising of some animals, working on the farmhouse, doing things together as a family, really just trying to uplift and entertain. Also just being good stewards of the land that God's blessed us with and creating habitat and managing a healthy wildlife population. Also sharing some hunting adventures as our children start to grow up and give them that real sense of where their food does actually come from, the way God intended us to harvest that. I just wanted to take a moment here and read a quick scripture. Of all things, when I opened my egg carton this morning collecting eggs for the chickens, this was in there, and I was kind of looking for some purpose to start this video out. And I think if you guys follow along as I share more of the story with you, this scripture will make sense. But for any of you that have any endeavors you're going into and just trying to walk in faith, this scripture says a lot. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for wholeness and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you." Amen. That is so true. Well, guys, if you've got some time, grab a snack and take a seat, and I'll take you on a little adventure. Thanks for following along. So I would like to start out with a picture, because we all need a face with a name. And this picture is really what got me to fall in love with the farm. Before we had any notion to really buy it, we were just kind of considering. I was shown this picture and immediately felt like I was taken back to that moment in time. I'd like to think this is 1890s, maybe 1900 at the latest. And it shows the original house in all its glory. And craftsmanship is just so beautiful. So now that we've got some faces here, we've got a man on the porch and a dog next to his heel and a lady sitting in a rocking chair right under that right window. Let's go out and visit who they were. Okay, hopefully the wind isn't too bad blowing out here, but we'll do a quick visit to the end of the drive and show you the Centennial Farm plaque with all the names, and I'll give you a little history rundown from there. Okie doke. So my wife's family is the Reverts. This farm was started in February of 1884 by John Daniel and Hawkie Reverts. Passed on to Daniel and Bessie Reverts, James and Irma Reverts, that would have been my wife's grandparents, and then their daughter Rosalind and her husband John Smith, who then sold the farm to Ashley and I. You can see over 100 years of ownership in the same family, and we're getting pretty close to being a bicentennial farm, which is really cool. But anyways, there's a little history of who's been here before us, and many children and families in between that didn't take ownership of the farm were born and raised here. Here's a really neat piece of the farm's history that was in back of one of the old barns, and I drug some things out and pulled it out and made this bed up here for the Centennial Farm plaque. It's so cool. An old horse-drawn cultivator. I suppose it could have been tractor-drawn too, but I'd like to think of a team of horses hooked up to that. I've been trying to find some moments where you have some breaks in the wind. I'm not sure I'm going to get that, but as you can see, here's the house, just like the one in the picture, minus the front porch going all the way across. That sure was a beautiful detail, but I'm sure over time they probably had some issues with the roof and had to tear it off for posts. Back in those days, they usually built a porch right off the front of the house, and it was all wood. And eventually, wood and moisture in the ground don't get along. One day, may do another wraparound. Some things have changed here off to the right as far as additions go. But really, the house kind of remains unchanged. All the eaves, the overhang, soffit is all still the original wood. It's definitely in need of some painting. It's another view from this side of the house. Well, I had to find a spot where I could get out of the wind, do a little more explaining on the history of the house. So best we know is that the house was built sometime around 1884. That's when my wife's great-great-grandfather would have gotten here. I think they came straight from Germany, is the best I know. The house, however, wasn't built by her family. There was a family from the East Coast, husband and wife, went by the name of Merrill, and that's actually the next road down kitty corner to us is Merrill Road. I'm not sure on how much land they actually owned, but as the house was being constructed, apparently the husband passed away, the wife was widowed, and sold the house and somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 acres to my wife's family. I've been told that they finished the house. I don't know to what extent that was. I don't know if the house was just simply framed, if it was framed and had windows and a roof, and they did the finish work, but either way, whoever did work in the house, which I have an inclination that a lot of the trim work was done by her family, they did with great detail. And when we get done doing some remodeling, I'll bring you guys in there and show you that. But anyways, that's kind of some of the history on the house. Now, I don't know if the farm's original name was the Pine Hill Dairy, but those are the signs that came off the silo, and I believe that's what my wife's grandfather had named it, and rightfully so. A lot of these trees you can see in that early photograph that I started the video with, and obviously like that white pine there is enormous and well over 100 years old. This stump here, I actually counted the rings on it one day, and it had over 140 rings. That looks like that would have been maybe some type of white pine or red pine. I'm not a tree expert. I believe this is a ponderosa pine. Very old tree. I think it's my favorite one. It's just got so much character. One thing that I wanted to note about the house, now that the wind has settled here a little bit, is this section of the house here obviously is not original. And in that old photo, you can see a roof line that cuts back and another chimney coming out of it and another set of dormers. My understanding is that that portion of the house was actually cut off in the early 1900s and given to a family member who may not have been afforded to build their own. I'm not really sure, but they actually cut that section of the house off and moved it down the road. And that was that family member's house. And I think it burned down a long, long time ago, but family folklore is that was the case. And they rebuilt a garage addition here off the back of it. John and Rosalind did a very nice job with it, but would have been really neat to see what that other original section of house was for. And my understanding also is it had its own separate entrance and staircase, so it just makes you wonder if the family that was building it from the East Coast had planned on using that section of house for hired help, farm hands and whatnot, because for its day and being in the location that it is, it's a pretty decent sized house for a farmhouse out in the country. So I think they did have some big plans for this. And thankfully it wound up in my wife's family, and we've got even bigger plans. So here's the old barn that everyone's curious about. Circa, I believe it's 1905 or 04. I have to ask my wife to correct me on that, but up there on the cupola, apparently there used to be a date, and it's long since fallen off. We've got some old pictures that I can put up on this video too of different things they had going on throughout the years here, but this back portion was actually an addition put on. I don't know if the pictures have dates or not, but I would assume it was sometime in the 50s that they added on. You can see where the original gable ended, and then they added this on. So unfortunately, this barn has seen better days. And as much as I would love to try and fix, restore it, I just don't think I'm going to be able to, due to some foundation issues on the back side, and the roof is pretty well gone on the northwest corner. It'll be hard to see from back here. I'll take you around the other side, but there's actually a portion of foundation hidden in all this mess. That was apparently another section of these barns with a dirt floor. That's what my father-in-law said. He said it was always fun to clean the manure out. I'm going to take you in here. You can bear with the mess. We're still just getting through unpacking after a year. But this would have been a freestall barn. Well, not a freestall barn. A stanchion barn with a milk house. The conveyor system for the manure to be taken around and then out and unloaded into the wagon. Like I said, unfortunately, I just don't think there's a lot I can do to save this barn. We got critters living in here. I think there's possum that lives in there. And then this is what I was saying about the roof on the back side. That's an actual top beam that has fallen off the edge of the roof. And it kind of gives me the spooks to even be in here. You can see there's a turnbuckle that was wrapped. Let's see, there's a turnbuckle that was wrapped around there from one end of the barn to the other to keep it from letting go. And it's long since rotted, so it's letting go now. You can see this beam here is about slid right off the post. And I think that once that goes, the rest rest will probably follow. It's just too dangerous to get in here and really try to do anything, which is a shame, but we're preserving the history by making this video, minus all the junk. But this was the milk house, and the roof's been leaking for a long time in here too, so going on, and I still have to get this power sorted out because it's running a well. I'm gonna get there eventually. Here's a dairy herd monitor, which I couldn't tell you the first thing about, but Ashley's dad, my father-in-law, was the last one to farm here, and this is all his handiwork, I'm sure. Different cows were coming into gestation, pre-calving conditions, calving date, days after calving. That's pretty neat. I think I'm gonna pull this off and try and clean it up and save it for a little farm history. You can see there's a pipeline washer. I'm sure they had tanks in here and all kinds of different stuff at one point. I'm sure it was kind of well, it was the heart of the farm, being a dairy farm. Something I think is pretty cool. This is farmer ingenuity for a self-closing door. It's like an old window weight and a pulley. Pretty neat. So I climbed up in here once about a month or two ago and tried to shoot some video with another camera, and it just didn't turn out very well. I'm gonna do it again reluctantly because I'm fairly certain that there's some raccoons living up here, which they can tend to be a little cranky sometimes. You can see this is the addition. All kinds of straw left up here still. This old wooden ladder is probably lucky that this is even holding me, to be honest. The last thing I need to do is fall down a ladder after just having knee surgery. But hello. Any critters up here? All right. Now we just gotta pray we don't fall through the floor. You can see how much of a mess this is gonna be when we go to take this down, or if it falls. But I'll take you into the original section here. It's about 120 degrees right now. This is where I get a little scary. I don't love the floor in here because the roof has been, oh yeah, wow. You can just see how much that section has dropped away from this plate. I mean, this wall is leaning out about 2 feet, and that's dropped in about 2 feet. I mean, this could really, wow. That could kind of let loose at any minute. So I don't want to be up here too long. But anyways, you can see the old hay trolley, which I'd like to take down. See if I can zoom in on it. They had a track system to bring in loose hay and drop it in here. Would have been pretty cool. Pretty neat to see in operation in its time. There is some beautiful wood that hopefully we can salvage, but yeah, I think come winter time, I'm gonna have to get an excavator out here and drop it, or it's gonna drop on its own, and that's gonna be an even bigger mess. But yeah, I didn't even notice this last time I was up here. That section of wall, I honestly don't even want to walk by it. Once that pulls away, this whole roof, you can see how bowed those are. Once that section of wall pulls away, this whole roof's gonna come down. That's the history on the barn. Like I said, I'm glad we're getting a chance to document it here. I'd probably prefer to not have to come back up here again. I don't feel so great walking around. This section here is still honestly pretty good, and who knows, if I could get crafty enough with a chainsaw and maybe get a lift out here, I may be able to cut this section free from the other section, and who knows, maybe we could save this part of the barn. That would be pretty neat, wouldn't it? Bird's eye view from the loft. Anyways, glad I got to show you guys the barn. The old barn is what we call it. I'm gonna head down and show you some of the others. So here is my claim to fame to this story. It is the chicken coop I built this summer. Obviously haven't gotten to site it yet, but I actually reused the old foundation of the original chicken coop, and unfortunately, same thing, the roof had gone on that. And we had to tear it down, but it was so big. The rooster's saying hi. I knew we weren't gonna have that many chickens and couldn't afford to build something on the entire foundation again. I believe my father-in-law said 150 to 200 chickens. I did repurpose some of the old vinyl window inserts and just trimmed it out with some PVC. Should last for a long time. Howdy, chickers. We've got 14 laying hens and that blue-faced rooster right there. I have no idea what the breed is. I got him from my wife's cousin. I was kind of against roosters because we always had them growing up and they were mean, but this guy is really docile. His name's Prince Charming. What do you say, girls? This has been such a fun experience for Ashley and the kids, and I really enjoyed having the chickens, and they provide us with a lot of fresh protein, and they're pretty easy to take care of. A lot of times we'll let them run out in the yard, but it gets tough to do sometimes with my dog because she's a bird dog, and bird dogs and chickens don't get along. But right now, I mean, this is our first year with them, raising them from chicks. It's October and we're getting usually 7 or 8 eggs a day, which I think is pretty good. It's enough to feed us, and then we're usually able to sell 3 or 4 dozen a month. So that works out nice. What you see here is the remains of a hog building, a hog barn. See, there's a ramp going down here. There's actually foundation all the way out into where that maple tree is, surrounding this whole thing. This may have been a dry lot out here. And I believe they had somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 hogs at one time. What breed they were, I'm not sure, but I did find some old pictures, and I'll pull those up when I get a chance. But a little bit of everything out here: chickens, hogs, dairy cattle. You can see back here on the back side of the old barn where there was another foundation. It's since been reclaimed by nature, and something I always thought was peculiar is this horseshoe that was set into the concrete. And I wish I'd known the story of that. I asked my father-in-law and he wasn't sure either. But he said originally there was a door here, and so this was probably, a stoop to walk out on. And I bet you that horse, looking at the size of the shoe, could have been some kind of draft horse. And maybe her great-great-grandfather's favorite wagon puller or something. It'd be neat to find that out. This is the corn crib, which has also seen better days. But I do think this is something I'm going to be able to salvage, and I'm going to be pretty adamant about it here. I think in the next year, and get a roof on it at the very least, and then address some of the structural things, which there's nothing too terrible. I mean, we've got some rot in some areas, but all in all, it's got a little bit of a lean to it. That's why they call it a lean-to. It's my dad joke for the day. But I think I could save it. And I think it could make a really neat workshop. Or even, if we ever outgrow our pumpkin wagon down there, we could even have a little farm shop right here. But I'm considering taking these slat walls out, putting some beams in, and pouring a new floor the same height as the sidewalls there. Then putting a new header in, extending that up, putting garage doors in, and then that's a big building. I think it's 28 by 60. So you can see back here where there's some issues. But all in all, I feel pretty optimistic about this one. Then out here was all feedlot. My understanding is that these concrete curbs here held some concrete trough style feeders. And so the cows could come out here and just eat throughout the day as corn and silage. Silage was in this one on the right, I believe, and corn was in that concrete silo. My understanding is from my father-in-law again that there was some type of feed conveyor that was able to be tied into this silo, and they actually had a chute that came out of the side of this grain house and went over and filled these feed bunks up. I'm not sure how they did that, but it would have been awesome to see that in operation. Pretty cool stuff to think they had to climb these, I think, just about every day to check levels and move augers and whatnot. I am still yet to climb up there, and it's not because I'm scared. I've had a bad knee. I finally got surgery, and maybe I ought to do it here pretty soon. That one to me looks more pleasant. This one here, that just doesn't look so fun. Maybe one day, once we get all this other stuff addressed, we could figure out something unique to do with the silos. I've seen projects where people make little Airbnbs and things like that. Who knows? But to see this place operating in its day, I think would have been something really, really special. It was a good sized farm. Okay, so now we'll fast forward to present time and our family's story. So Ashley and I never dreamed that we would be on this farm. when Ashley and I met, which is 7 years ago, I was a broke, poor musician slash carpenter. Didn't really have a great plan moving ahead as we got married, but as soon as we did, I knew that I had to kick into gear and really kind of start making a name for myself. We were talking about having kids right away and playing bars on weekends and building tables a couple times a month. Weren't exactly the greatest career choice in the world, but I really stepped into my construction background. I worked for my uncle, who's a builder, for about 40 years. I worked for him from 2005, I believe, till about 2012. And then when Ashley and I got married, decided to make a full run at a construction company. And I started doing some big commercial projects and then worked into remodeling, building some garages, additions, and then ultimately houses. So as things progressed with us, within our first year, we moved twice, I believe, and kept getting farther out towards the country. Knew that we wanted land at some point, couldn't afford it. Found a little development down the road from here and I built us a house. It was a nice rural setting, quiet, and knew that wasn't going to be our forever home, but built the house. And it wasn't too far from the farm here, only about 7 or 8 minutes. And as we were building the house, Ashley's aunt and uncle, who were living here at the time, would stop in and make jokes about how they would peek in and take a look when I was gone and whatever, but they made jokes about trading, swapping houses for the farm. And I laughed it off the first year or two. I'd never spent much time out here other than just some family get-togethers in the house. I'd never gone back and looked at the land or anything like that. Well, just to show you the way that God works, they had asked me to come do some work on the front porch. Actually, that section that I stained in the first video we posted. They wanted me to replace some decking, and I came out here and spent a day or maybe a day and a half. And when I got done, I had asked her uncle, I said, "Hey, would you mind if I just take a walk out back real quick? I'm kind of big into habitat and deer hunting and that, and I'd just be curious to see what's back there." And he said, "Sure, go ahead." And so it was all cattle pasture, and it was grass that was only about ankle high, and everything was just mowed and green and real proper looking. But I went back there and I just had a feeling that there could be something really special. It was beautiful. Found that there's a spring-fed limestone creek, which you don't see. Rolling limestone hills, giant bur oak trees, old cedars. It just really had almost a mystical feel to it. And so I got home that night after finishing the deck, and I told Ashley, I said, "You know what? We might ought to think about that offer." And she kind of laughed about it too. And I said, "You need to go back out back and take a look." I said, "Have you ever been back there?" And she said, No, I haven't. Never been beyond the yard." And I said, "I think we need to take a look, and you might change your mind." And so we did. And I think she kind of had the same feeling, but she was a lot more worried than I was, just based on the looks of some of the buildings and the barns and everything, and just knew that it was going to be a big undertaking. And I did too. I was scared. But we did some praying about it, and it kind of happened fast, like everything else in our life. And her family was very fair with us, and we worked out a deal, and I think within a year's time, we were out here. And it's been kind of a whirlwind ever since, because Ashley did not grow up a country girl by any means. I grew up on property and lived to be in the outdoors, and it was kind of second nature for me. It was a little bit of a change for her, because she went from this brand new house that I had built us, black and white everything, perfect, pristine storage, to a 140-year-old house that has floors that slope from one end to the other and cracked plaster and everything. Really, the house is in great shape for its age. It just needs some TLC. But God has been good to us in this whole thing. You know, for the longest time, I'm trying to find this purpose and understand the path, and we've gone through ups and downs in our lives and our marriages. We've had some scary moments just in general. And every day that goes by out here, just keeping my eyes open and my ears open and praying, God gives me a little glimpse of what's to come. And it just comes in the form of some type of little blessing or a little victory. And I know that this place was meant for us. After 140 years, it's pretty incredible to think. We didn't make it here by mistake, but it sure felt like it felt like it wasn't for us to begin with, but we followed what God put on our hearts. And it's just been an amazing journey. And so the purpose of this channel and these videos, as we go on and we learn more. We didn't get a chance to do any filming this spring because we were so busy just getting ready, but Ashley cultivated a huge garden, and we produced a ton of food and canned, and we've got these chickens. We're working on these buildings. We're doing work in the house, remodeling, the habitat work out back. There's gonna be a lot of opportunity here for us to encourage other people who might be thinking about taking the same path, and also bring hope to some people that may need it. I know that when I wound up out here, I was in a pretty low place in my life. I mean, on the outside, in the construction world, I was building houses and had a trailer with my name on it and guys working for me and all these tools. But on the inside, I was just broken and empty. And getting back to the land and getting my hands in the soil and listening to the wind and hearing God's voice in the creation has really restored me in my life and put a lot of things into perspective. And I believe that that's something to be shared and not just held for your own treasure. And so I do believe in the future, as we get this place whipped into shape, that there's going to be opportunities to bring other people out here and help fill their tanks when they're empty too. And I just want to document that journey. I'm so happy for any of you that stayed tuned and watched this whole thing. I can't thank you enough. I hope as time goes on, we can do a lot of entertaining videos for you, and ultimately just encourage you as we walk the paths together. So for October 8th, 2025, I'm going to sign out for the Pine Hill Acres Farm. Thanks so much, guys. Have a wonderful day.